Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Sporting Limerick Soccer Podcast, where we're joined by analysts Jason and Noel O'Connor. Noel, before we start, actually, it was brought to my attention by your fellow correspondent there, Jason, last week when I was at the Wexford game that, you know, your connections in Wexford have led you to buy an advertising hoarding there by the name of the Saucy Butcher that apparently you go by down in Wexford. Is this true?
Yeah, well, I went by a lot of names down in Wexford, so it all may well be true. But I was delighted to get the photo of it because I had forgotten about it, to be honest.
Yeah, Jason got one back there, I'd say, for the slagging from the last couple of weeks. But Jason, just while we're on the subject of Wexford, obviously Treaty United defeated Wexford 2-1 in Freddie Carrick Park last Friday. It was the club's first, or the senior men's team, first away win of the season. Another box ticked, I suppose, as I said to Tommy Barrett after the game. And considering the way it started, obviously disastrous start. Within 2 minutes, you go behind to a very soft goal from Kyle Robinson. It was a really good win. What did you make of the performance?
I thought it was a great win, Adrian. You know, and as Tommy said, and as we say, and Noel in particular said it last week, 3 points in this division makes a big difference, and away from home they're very, very hard to come by. As you rightly say, the goal down inside 2 minutes. Kyle Robinson, a super finish now, to be fair to him. Back four looked very square, probably because it was so early in the game. If we're going to make a case for them, probably too far out for Ty Grind to sweep up as well. But it was something that Wexford tried to target all night. I felt, they were trying to hit balls over the top at times because the new Treaty were high up the pitch. But fantastic response, obviously, from the lads. 2 very, very good goals. And Mark Ludden, I suppose, shown his worth yet again, involved in both goals. Second goal, I suppose, in particular, really, really good move. And Jack Lynch finished it off. And I think it's important to mention Jack. I thought him and Callum McNamara were pivotal to turning the game in Treaty's favour. Really done a good job in the middle of the park, I felt, picking up second balls, winning first balls as well. And that kind of turned the tide in Treaty's favour. We spoke last week about how Wexford would set up, and they did set up in that shape. The 3-4-1-2, and I felt they were a little bit wide open at the back at times. You know, the centre backs looked too far apart for me, the 3 centre backs, and that was kind of part of the second goal. It was centre backs out in wide areas, and a 2v1 obviously created from a diagonal pass from Charlie Fleming to Joel Custrain. Ludden on the overlap, and Kieran Hanlon will be disappointed he didn't finish it. But Jack Lynch finished it off. And the second half, it was a really good performance. I thought they managed the game really, really well. You know, sat in. We're happy with their lot. We're happy to invite Wexford on. And again, the introduction of Willie Armshaw, always a threat on the break. Matt McKevitt also, massive energy when he came on. And we saw him a little earlier than usual. So maybe Tommy is leaning towards giving him a start. But really, really good with Adrian. First away win of the season. And a big 3 points when you look at the way the other results went.
Yeah, Noel, we did highlight this game as a very dangerous game, considering Ian Ryan had picked up his first win as manager and the club had picked up the first win in the season. Then you concede within 2 minutes. It definitely seemed like we could have been right in what we said. In fairness to Treaty, there was great character shown, Noel, but you know, one outside the second goal was a superb goal as well. The first goal coming from a set piece, and true Treaty could have scored 4 goals in the first half alone from set pieces. It has proved a really strong point, which is vital in the second tier in League of Ireland.
There's no doubt about it, and I suppose the advantage, to concede early, it gives you a lot of time to come back. And in fairness to Treaty, they didn't take a long time to come back into the game, and they had a couple of chances before they scored. Wexford looked very vulnerable to any cross in the box. Didn't seem to be capable of dealing with any set piece. I felt they might have done their homework a small bit better in terms that they seem to be kind of caught cold, if you like, with some of the deliveries from Treaty, where you think that that they would have seen them before. particularly for Anto O'Donnell's, because he seems to have taken Clyde O'Connell's place at the moment, with Clyde out in, arriving at the back post or being at the back post, and Treaty looking for that overhead ball. But the way they keep the ball alive in the set plays is really, really impressive. If it goes too far to one side, you've likes of Joel Costano who picks it up, doesn't stand on somebody, just make sure he misses the first man and just puts it back into the danger area. Mark Ludden is very good at that as well, and they're certainly reaping their rewards from that.
Yeah, certainly. And Jason, just a point I wanted to pick up on that you mentioned there about Willie Armshaw. I know there's 4 subs made for Treaty, but in particular Armshaw and McKevitt, they both had a goal each actually. Well, obviously there was a superb individual run from Willie Armshaw where he left both Harry Groom, I think, and definitely Larkin Fitzgerald for dead towards the end of the game, and was just hit a shot wide. Obviously Matt McKevitt did very well when he came on and was on for half an hour as well. I asked Tommy after the game, were they pushing for a start? He kind of gave me the answer that they were, but he also likes bringing them on when the game is a bit more open or, off the bench. Do you think that it's only a matter of time now before one of them, and maybe even particularly McKevitt, will get a start?
Yeah, I think McKevitt in particular, you wouldn't have an issue starting. Looking at the Wexford game, Kieran Hanlon and Larkin Fitzgerald, it's similar in the sense, physical battle, bouncing off each other. I felt McKevitt gave Larkin a whole new set of problems when he came on. He's full of energy. We don't want to just focus on his work rate and he's running in behind, because he looks technically good as well, Adrian. You wouldn't be afraid to leave him up there on his own. He's able to hold the ball up, and he's certainly running Kieran Hanlon close now at the moment for the starting berths. But I suppose then, when you're looking at it from a managerial point of view, when you need to change the game, who's going to be more effective coming off the bench? Is it going to be Kieran Hanlon? Is it going to be Matt McKevitt? So I suppose that is a factor as well. But the lad certainly deserves a start, in my opinion. Willie Armshaw, slightly different, because he's not going to give you the defensive side. I suppose that Matt Keane or even Joel Custrain, or if it's Edward McCarthy that's back out there, when Sean McSweeney is back in the side. So he's more of an impact player at the moment for me. If Treaty were dominating games, you'd be saying, yeah, you can start Willie and you're getting that teams from the beginning. But Matt McKevitt in particular, yeah, I think he'd be very, very close now in the coming weeks.
We move on now, Noel, to the Cobh Ramblers game, which is on Saturday evening at Coleman's Park at 7 p.m. It's a game where Cobh now are coming into them in great form as such. They've beaten Cork now, had a great win, the eye-catching win of the round against UCD last week. It's a very tricky tie at any point, but now it's going to be extremely tricky. But both sides going in full of confidence, so it should be a good game, really. Yeah,
it's got the hallmarks of a great game. I thought Cobh were particularly poor the night they played in the Marcus Field. One of the I think it was the poorest performance we saw from any team. I watched them a few times after. I saw them against Galway, and while they were beaten 3-0, there was a couple of penalties in it, and I thought some of their players did really, really well. I think the centre forward is going to be a handful. Is it Jake Hegarty? Even though he hadn't been scoring a match, I saw him against Bray as well. I thought his play. How we talk about the likes of what Kieran Hanlon does, he's back to goal, holding it up, bringing players into it, and he's added a goal to it now, so he'll certainly be full of confidence. And you still wonder about how true the form is for Cobh. You'd still think the Treaty are favourites going down there. Cobh have a few more results to get, I think, before you could put them on a par with Treaty at the moment. When you look at Treaty with their 19 points, they've certainly been a lot more consistent than Cobh. And Tommy will well know that it's a real banana skin going down there, and it's a bit like when Cobh played Cork City. The kind of form is out the window. It's the next kind of derby for Cobh outside Cork City, and it'll be a really, really tough game, but you still have a lot of confidence in Treaty coming away there with the 3 points, with the form that they're in at the moment.
Jason, admittedly, I only watched the bones of a half an hour so far of the UCD and Cobh game last week. It seemed like they had started with a 4-3-3 as such. Kieran Griffin, though, playing close to Jake Hegarty. They actually had a couple of chances off that as well. Lee Devitt was playing in the middle, which he'd be more accustomed to, I suppose. There's going to be a few battles that Treaty have to win. There's one battle, I suppose, in particular we might highlight, is that, you know, you've Ian Turner, who started out on the left in UCD. You know, it's going to be Charlie Fleming returning to a club where he's very close, which is very close to his heart as well. If Turner is on form, in particular, that's one battle that'll be interesting to watch.
Yeah, Will Adrian, it was, I suppose, a 4-3-3 or a 4-2-3-1, whatever way you want to look at it, in and out of possession. Lee Devitt was probably the furthest forward of the three in the middle, and he's more of a defensive, winning the ball type of player, and he did a lot of work off the ball as well, so he's very effective for him. UCD obviously set up with 3 centre-backs, so that's the 2 wide players. You had Turner, you had also Cooper in wide areas, and they were pulling the UCD centre-backs out. It'll be a different proposition, as we know, when they face a back four with Treaty. Charlie Fleming's discipline, I suppose, let him down in the home game with them, and I know Noel has some reservations about his temperament and maybe his mentality and stuff like that, so I'm sure that'll be questioned. You mentioned Turner there, and in fairness to Adrian, you've called him a couple of times. Depends what Turner turns up, really. He can be very, very effective, as we know, and then can be very ineffective as well at the same time. So that'll certainly be an interesting battle, like you said. Where I think Treaty might get some joy, or where they could possibly get some joy, is down the flanks against Cobh. That's where UCD, I suppose, got most of their joy, and that's maybe where Treaty could target, especially on the left-hand side with Ludden, if he can get forward, and if it's the same with Joel Costrain out there. But they sat very, very deep against Cobh, or my apologies, Cobh sat very deep against UCD. Will they sit as deep when they play Treaty? That's kind of, I suppose, the things that we'll have to look at early in the game. But I suppose Treaty, like Noel said, 19 points on the board. Clubs are going to start looking a little bit more closely now at Treaty and how to break them down and where they can be got at. And look, it's blatant for everyone to see with the number of assists Mark Ludden has. I'm sure it'll be a tactic to try keep him at home, keep him pressed back. And I know if I was managing against Treaty, the first thing I'd be saying is don't be giving away cheap corner kicks or set pieces where they can trouble you. And if you take that out of Treaty's game, Adrian, then it might be a little bit more difficult for them.
Yeah, definitely. And on top of Mark Ludden's deliveries from corners, we also know that he can deliver a long throw, which is like a corner at times. The only thing is that Coleman's Park, as we all know, is a tighter pitch. You don't have the big long run up for a javelin type throw as well, that you might get the purchase you might get on it, and the power Noel as well. It's a pitch though overall that defensively would certainly suit Treaty, you'd imagine, from the outside looking in.
Yeah, because they like to fill up the middle, if you like, and they did it very well in the second half, particularly against Wexford, when they were in front, and Wexford kind of played into their hands. And Jason talks about, teams getting a bit of joy attacking the flanks, and I think if Cobh are to have any joy, they certainly won't get any joy if they try and go down the middle, because again the 2 centre backs were very went about their business in a very quiet way, but didn't give Wexford too much after conceding the goal. And you had Jack Lynch and Colin McNamara then, so you basically had a wall of 4 there in the middle. And a lot of the time I saw Wexford, particularly on the left-hand side, going down into the final third and then just knocking the ball inside, and they were knocking it into a crowded area. So certainly if you want to play it that way, a pitch like St. Coleman's Park would certainly suit you, and it'll be interesting to see if Cobh see the folly of that and maybe look for 1v1s against the fullbacks and try to get around them and create a different kind of a cross, which would trouble the Treaty centre-backs.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that develops. Jason, you touched on it a couple of times in your last piece there, that Treaty are on 19 points. Obviously, they've went into third outright on their own following last week's results. They're 8 points currently ahead of Cobh Ramblers going into this game. There's obviously a huge incentive now that if you beat Cobh, you're really putting them away from you a distance now, with a win. And considering the light we have UCD and Bray playing each other, you've Galway and Cabinteely playing each other around you as well, it would be unbelievable to get a victory on Saturday night.
Yeah, it'll be massive. Look, they're perfect. They're really, really good position, Adrian Treaty. But, it can change so quickly in this division. We've seen that as the weeks go by, and our Cobh out of the equation. If they beat Treaty, they're certainly not. They're back in the equation, in my opinion. But if Treaty do beat them, you could be chalking them off the list, and then you're looking at, okay, Shelburne probably go up as champions. Then it's 4 from UCD, Treaty, Cabinteely, Athlone, Galway and Bray. If Treaty get to 3 points in Coleman's Park. And it's coming to that stage where I suppose Treaty need to be thinking that way, and look, picking up some sort of a result every week is obviously their goal, and you can't be expecting to go away from home and win every week. It's not going to be as easy as that, but the inconsistency of Cobh, I suppose, would lead us into believing that Treaty can go there and win. And you rightly say, if that's the case and results go for them as well, then we're in dreamland. We really are, but I wouldn't be taking anything for granted, that's for sure.
Yeah, Noel, I will come to Jason on this point as well in a couple of minutes, because obviously he has strong views since the start of the season on this. But so you also agreed with him a bit last week in that you feel that Tommy Barrett there's been a bit of an evolution in terms of his approach to managing the team, a more defensive-minded approach since and less possession-based since he was with Limerick FC. When I put that to Tommy, he felt that maybe he agreed with you to a degree in terms of his time at the Premier Division, because he might have encouraged his teams to hold on to the ball more and not give it away as much. But he feels he hasn't changed an awful lot since the 2019 First Division campaign with Limerick FC. I suppose, what would be your response to that?
But sure, I'm sure Tommy knows best. I wouldn't have been following his style of play that closely. But I do feel that they are certainly more defensive now. Whether it is the characters and the personalities on the pitch that he has in comparison to the ones that are about 2019, I'm not sure. But I think anyone looking in, even a casual observer would say that they're certainly more defensive-minded, more pragmatic. I think they're better organised as well in terms of set plays. I mean, we are talking about that, and we keep on talking about how good they are in the attacking sense, but they're not conceding too many in the defensive sense either, and that was something maybe that wasn't there before, and it's certainly there now. Now sometimes it's the manager, and other times it's just the personnel, and if you have the right personnel there and that's what they want to do, well then it certainly helps you. But whatever he's done or hasn't done, I think his experiences of being a manager, because you keep on learning all the time, and you do make mistakes, and you see things, and you get older, more experience, and it certainly helps you. And you'd like to think every year that you are managing, you are becoming a better manager.
Yeah, and Jason, I suppose your own response to Tommy's response last week, and Noel mentioned obviously there can be a few factors to it. Obviously your experiences, your learning through your experiences in the past, and then you have your personnel, and then I suppose he also has, as we mentioned before, like Mike McCarthy and Mick Shield there, who, if we've learned anything from those lads in their time in junior football, they were always defence first types of coaches with their sides as well. So I suppose there is a number of factors that could lead to that change too. Yeah,
I suppose, look, when I was saying defensive, what I mean is they're a lot more solid in their defensive play. They're not overplaying in the defensive third. We saw a glimpse of that in pre-season, Adrian, and I was quick to point out that that's not going to work in this division. And thankfully, that was binned straight away, whether it was by Tommy or Dave Rooney as the goalkeeper coach, encouraging Ty Ryan not to be looking to be the centre of attention when the ball is in that area. But that kind of sums it up for me. They're not. That, when you look at that from a coaching point of view, that is defenders attacking. That's what we call that, when we're overplaying in our defensive third. When you're teaching young players how to play out from the back, that is defenders attacking, because you're in possession and you're trying to keep the ball. And that was always the way I saw Tommy's teams play, whether it was in the Premier, whether it was in the First Division, whether it was his time with Geraldines, even in the Premier Division, the year he did that. There was always a sense for me that there was overplaying in wrong areas, and it's it's certainly not a criticism of him. It's certainly the opposite, in fact, and there used to be a running joke between myself and Tommy about Neil Warnock and stuff like that. But I think he's realised that he's in the results business now, and he's certainly getting the results based on how the team is set up. And they're playing for corner kicks. You could see that obviously again against Wexford. There was a couple of occasions the ball was in Matt Keane's area of the pitch, actually, and Joel Castrane's. And rather than keep it in and try play and manufacture something, they were letting the ball run out of play for a corner kick. So that's the type of stuff that I'm talking about. And I don't think that can be denied. And I don't think Tommy should be kind of shying away from it. I think he should be proud of the results, proud of the performances. I'm sure he is. And we're very proud of the work that he's doing with the side. So there's no issue. It's not a criticism. It's just really an opinion, Adrian, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. And he will be totally aware of that as well. I suppose, we already know, Noel, from your earlier comment, what you really think in terms of what the result could be Saturday evening. But to give us a score prediction for Cobh and Treaty.
Yeah, I think I put my head in the chopping block as we were mad to talk about Butchers today, and go for 2-1 victory for Treaty. Just think overall they're a bit stronger, a bit more consistent, and I think the form they're in, I think they have a good chance of eking out a win. I'm not convinced yet that Cobh have kind of turned the corner. I'd probably be convinced if they do get a positive result on Saturday, but until they do, I wouldn't be just yet.
That was a good pun. I'm disappointed we didn't lead in with that now. Jason, your own view on the game Saturday. I know we were wrong last week as a whole unanimously and thankfully as well, but what's your own view this week?
Yeah, I never mind being wrong, Adrian, when Treaty come out with the 3 points, I'll be honest. Yeah, I'd agree with Noel. I think Treaty can go there and get the win. Very, very difficult to be predicting scores. If Cobh don't turn up, there could be 2 goals in the difference. If they do turn up, it could go the other way. But look, you're looking for a prediction. I'll join Noel this week and I'll say it's going to be an away win. I'd love to see Ty Ryan keep a clean sheet. It's a while since he kept one. I think he's a really, really good keeper. So maybe 1 or 2-0 to Treaty. Love to see it.
Yeah, I'm a bit uneasy with all this optimism, but we'll see how it plays out over the weekend. To move on to some of the other fixtures, some big fixtures in the division, I suppose, like every week. Noel, Bray Wanderers have host UCD at the Carlisle grounds. It's a massive game, probably more so for Bray even than UCD, despite the fact that UCD will be chomping at the bit to get back after a 2-1 defeat at home to Cobh. Yeah,
and it's 2 teams obviously in fairly desperate need of something. I still would feel that UCD are a very good side, and you might get that odd inconsistent result because of what they are, in general, a group of students. But overall, to me, they've been a lot better than Bray, and there's a bit more goals in them as well. So I'd go for UCD win there.
Yeah, and Jason, then we have Galway hosting Cavan-Teely. It's the game that didn't go ahead that Galway were awarded 3 points for in the first round of fixtures due to the late COVID positive test. We know there was a bit of controversy around it, but look, Galway got the 3 points. Galway also got the 3 points again very late. I suppose there's 2 ways of looking at Galway, isn't there? They really haven't come out of the blocks in most games. They seem to take ages to get going. The only other thing you will say about them, though, is they don't give up. I think that must be 3 or 4 games now that they've scored in injury time to rescue points or even win games.
Yeah, and I watched the back, Adrian, and look, as you'd expect, I suppose, huge celebrations from the team when they got the winner. Kind of similar to what we saw from Treaty on a couple of occasions when they were scoring with the whole team. And John Caulfield, I saw, was in the middle of the celebrations himself, which is excellent to see. And that shows, I suppose, the togetherness that Galway still have, despite not having a fantastic start to the season. I was wrong on Cavan-Teely last week. I thought Cork would turn them over, and they didn't, and Cork look in big trouble for me. But, yeah, look, I always go back to John Caulfield as someone I admire. His approach is something I admire, his honesty. And I'd like to see them do well, and I think they will beat Cavan-Teely this weekend, and I think it's kind of onwards and upwards for Galway, and I wouldn't bet against them, but in the playoffs, certainly not.
Yeah, definitely. And Noel, on to yourself now. We have two teams who are kind of coming in downbeat mood really to this game. You've Athlone Town and Cork City playing each other at Lizzie Woolen. I was just, out of interest looking at comments underneath on Twitter from Galway's late winner. I know it's obviously a real sucker punch to concede late, and everyone feels like it's the end of the world when you're the team that concedes. But Athlone have really, outside of one or two results, have obviously been on a downward spiral considering their early start. This is very important, because Cork City do look in big trouble. They've only got 9 points. So, for both managers as well, this is a really big night.
Huge night, I think, yeah. I think is it one win in 5 now for Athlone, a team that was going really well. Before that, they got a great win in Turner's Cross with a kind of a goal with 10 minutes to go, a mistake from a Cork defender. I'm leaning towards a draw here. I think they are two teams in a bit of bother, obviously, because Athlone have the points on the board. They're not in as a poor position as Cork are, and I just have a feeling that this game will end up as a draw.
Yeah, and then finally on to the last game of the bunch. We've Wexford against Shelbourne, and I know that young Evan Farrell came on last week for Wexford, and I was actually speaking to his relations after the game, and they were obviously fearing the worst when you Shelbourne at the moment in the form they were in coming to town. Jason, they really are in scintillating form, and speaking to both the Treaty and Wexford camps, it's kind of coming around the whole division now that there's an acceptance that Shelbourne looked like the odds on, like we've been saying as well. It's going to be an unbelievably difficult night for Ian Ryan and Wexford, judging by last week.
What is, a very, very strong result again last week against Bray. And Bray have quality players in their squad, albeit they haven't been firing all season, but Shelbourne comfortably turned them over, 8 wins, 3 draws, and yet to suffer defeat. They could be looking at going through the season undefeated, I suppose, Adrian, and kudos to Noel for flagging that at the start of the season. They were picked to win the league, and it certainly looks that way. The goals against Column kind of tells you all you need to know, I suppose. 10 goals only conceded, and I suppose you look down the table and Treaty have only conceded 11, and that's where I suppose the truth lies, because we look further down and Wexford are 24 conceded, so it could be a very, very tough night, especially if they set up in the same shape, I suppose, with that back three really spread out. I think it should be more of a 5 at the back for Wexford as opposed to a 3. Obviously, we saw last week they've lost Alex O'Hanlon. He went back, and Luke Turner. Both were on loan spells with Wexford, and they've been a loss for them. So they won't be looking forward to the firepower coming from Shelbourne. But obviously, you couldn't look past the Shells win there.
Yeah, definitely. It's bound to be an exciting weekend, and we'll be glued to the action this weekend and the results as well. To move on, I suppose, to the big talking point, we have the Euro 2020 Championships delayed for a year, being played out at the moment. Before we go on maybe to the matches and whatnot, Noel, we had a very scary moment to the whole world when Christian Eriksen collapsed during the game between Denmark and Finland, and it looked really bleak there for 15 to 20 minutes. Very, very scary. It just shows you as well, Noel, the absolute importance. I know at that level, you will always have the top medics, but for every club around the country, all countries at any level, the importance of having defibrillators on board, a real life-saving situation. I know you said you were speaking to Dave Mahidi, who said they've been used in UL recently and have been life-saving for many people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose, look, I mean, just the sense of relief that, there's been statements and words out of Christian Eriksen since, so because it could have been a lot worse. And initially people were saying that, that the worst had happened. I suppose the couple of bits that kind of jumped out at me is you do wonder what's going on, because obviously he's had a couple of massive moves in his career, and I'm sure he's gone through some very strenuous medicals in those moves, and obviously nothing has shown up in those. And for something like this to happen to a guy so young, and then I just picked up today or something that it was his 66th game of this season, and then you wonder, like, is this what's happening? Because players are getting fitter and stronger. Their body fats are going lower. They're covering a lot more ground. They're doing a lot faster, and there has to be an end game at some stage in terms of what the human body can do. And it's just is it the next kind of concussion scandal, if you like? This what happened 20 or 30 years ago in terms of the damage that people got from hitting the ball. I wonder is all this mega fitness, if you like, and all the games that are being crammed in 2 or 3 games a week, and the level that that they're playing at now, the speed that they're playing at now, and the training they're doing, is there a detrimental effect in that? So look, the main thing is that he's okay, but I'm sure people will be watching closely and seeing is there more of this. I'm sure a lot of players now will have themselves checked out again, and there will be more regular checking, which certainly will be good. But it's just baffling to think that a guy that age and of that fitness, and with the medical expertise around him for the last 10 years, that something like this could have happened.
Yeah, it is an interesting point, Jason, because obviously it could be just an individual, unluckiness, or that would be the case. But as Noel said, the players over the last 15 years, maybe in particular, are almost like test tube dummies, aren't they, at the moment? Because we don't really know what the results of this modern professionalism. I mean, you've got players strenuously doing gym sessions all the time, playing a lot of games, and in the code of soccer we'll speak about now. But you have obviously like some Munster players as well when they went into the professional era. I suppose we don't really know the effects of what those players are being put through. I know people will say it's their job and the likes, but it has gone up a notch, and maybe there is a point there that might be a bit too strenuous as well.
Yeah, like you said, Adrian, it's hard to know. You can flip that over, I suppose, then and question that in the past, players didn't get the same care and attention, that they do now. There's recovery sessions, and obviously with COVID this year, games were crammed in, and as Noel said there, the quantity of games played and the rest periods in between would be a factor. But unfortunately, players dropping on the pitch isn't something new, Adrian, is it? We look back, God rest their souls, Marc-Vivien Foé, obviously someone that we watched play in the Premiership, with Man City and West Ham, Chick Diote with Newcastle as well. Both players collapsed on the pitches, so is it time that maybe the government stepped in, and provide defibrillators, if that's possible, for every ground in the country, and every code as well, not just football, the other sports, because obviously it's when something happens like that in the Euros, it's for everybody to see. But when you bring things down to local level and provincial levels, like myself and Noel and yourself always do, then it's the care of the player that should be at the centre of it, and players' health. So I suppose the government, the national governing bodies, should be doing all they can to prevent it.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously, as well as defibrillators, the training levels from coaches and volunteers, obviously, on using them would be vital as well. Noel, I suppose, to get on to maybe a brighter note, obviously it's great that Christian Eriksen came through that, and that was a big boost for everybody. Obviously maybe the Danish about playing the game, there's debates on whether that should have went ahead on the same night. But anyway, going on to maybe how has the tournament been so far for you? I know we haven't all seen as much as we maybe might have liked, but obviously the Scottish and English and Welsh have all had differing starts. You've got a draw, a defeat and a win there. Obviously the English started quite well. Of those nations, the Scottish will be bitterly disappointed, I suppose, after their loss today against the Czech Republic. They would have been targeting that game in that group. Yeah,
and look, it was a game I didn't see, but I was kind of taken with Steve Clarke's comments, that I heard throughout the morning, the radio, like he was kind of big enough Scotland are saying that they were entitled to be there and all that. And I thought it was a bit strange. It was like that, they kind of had a chip on their shoulder, like they didn't deserve to be there or something. And I found those comments just very, very strange from a manager on the eve of a big game. Look, they were beaten today. They've England on Friday, which, look, I think everyone would be interested in seeing that game. And look, it could be like Cobh and Cork City. Form goes out the window, and if they bounce back, there'll be a lot of pressure on England now, to swat them aside, for want of a better word. I thought they were impressive enough yesterday, the way they passed the ball and kept the ball, a bit workmanlike, but he picked a kind of a defensive kind of a side, really. I felt that Croatia have kind of shot their bolt. Obviously the World Cup final a couple of years ago, same group of players on the go, if you like, for 8 or 9 years, and they just looked a kind of a tired outfit to me. But it's early days yet, but a lot of good games. I've caught up in a lot of them, and a lot of good football being played. Couple of good goals, and it has the makings of a really, really good tournament.
Yeah, we're currently so dedicated that we're missing one of those games this evening, but that has to be done. Jason, we haven't made it ourselves, obviously, and we don't even go into the fact that we probably won't be making the next tournament either. But every tournament, there's always big talk because of how close we are as well about England and their chances. We obviously know the English media always build them up. Obviously, from what you've seen yesterday, probably, and what you think overall of the squad, do you think there is a real chance that this English team could finally bring football home, as they keep telling us?
No, and as much as I would like to see it, Adrian, I'll be honest, because when Ireland aren't in competitions like that, I would always support England, because we watch them.
That's the first for anyone I've heard.
No, we'll watch these players playing for Liverpool and Man United, and it's idiotic, really, in my eyes, that if they change shirts, they suddenly become out of favour with us, So I don't buy into that. It's sport for me, and I have a lot of friends in England and stuff like that. So I'd support England. Won't be waving the flag or anything like that, don't get me wrong now, but from a football point of view, I think they're short at the back, most definitely. I wouldn't have any faith in John Stones or Tyrone Mings, to be honest. Harry Maguire might make it at some point. They have some attacking players who are very, very entertaining. Obviously, Phil Foden and Jack Grealish when he gets a game. Sterling obviously got off the mark early, and Harry Kane. So they are nice to watch at times, Adrian, but they're definitely short for me. They've had a lot better squads in the past. I know they went close a couple of years ago and things done well in the World Cup and stuff like that. But I would say probably quarter-final, that would be about their limit.
I probably think along the same lines as yourself. Once again, lads, thanks very much for the contributions this week. We had a lot to talk about, and hopefully again next week we'll have plenty to talk about, and again be talking about another positive treaty performance and possibly victory, which will cover fast in the playoff chase for the new season. So thank you everyone for joining us, and we'll be back same time next week.